last death? Was that from Lambton, or was that one of the ones that was brought in from out west?
I didn't hear anything about it.
Or heard anything about it.
Okay, everyone, we are now live. You can begin when you're ready.
All right. I am going to call the meeting to order. I'll remind everyone to please dispose of any pecuniary interests at the appropriate time. And we do not have an update today from our medical officer of health, but that he will be back to provide an update at the next regular council meeting on July 7th. So we're going to go to Infrastructure and Development Services Division. We have some information, or an information report there on the Blue Box transition, producer responsibility update. We need a mover and a seconder to receive and file that report. Councillor Veens and Councillor Miller. Any questions or comments on that? Glad to see that the province is moving forward with that plan, and it will save some municipalities some money, I think, in the future. All in favor of receiving and filing that report? That is carried. Thank you. There is a report requiring a motion on the Oversize Load Corridor project. How does council want to deal with that? Or our committee want to deal with that? Councillor Veens, are you moving the recommendation?
Yes, I am.
Thank you. And Councillor or Deputy Warden Hand, are you seconding that? Okay. Any questions or comments on that? Councillor Weber.
It sounds like this is all going forward and working well. And I know it's the responsibility of the city to keep that the docks are getting worked on. Is that keeping pace with this project, or are we going to have this project done and the dock not ready? I know it's an integral part, and I know it's is there any update on how that's proceeding, that it's going to be completed when the rest of it is?
Mr. Cole, do you want to speak to that?
Sure. Through you, Chair Rombouts, absolutely. The city's done a fantastic job in getting a consultant on board early in the project. They progressed, I think, well within the normal expectations of the period that we have. And I think the city councillors on this committee will confirm that their most recent update has presented some recommendations, and they're going to be proceeding to finalize the design and starting construction shortly.
Good. That's.
Any other comments on that? All in favor of that? That is carried. Is there any other business today? Councillor Napper.
Yes, I guess to Jason Cole, through you. Have you been getting any complaints about there was another accident at Forest Road? I think I got the right committee here, haven't I? Forest Road and London Line there again, and I'm getting emails from folks that live around there looking to maybe proceed with a flashing light there or something. We've had reports on that before, have we, Jason?
Through you, Chair Rombouts, I think is Matt. Maybe Matt can give a little bit. Matt DeLine's on the line this morning. He might be able to provide just a little bit more data on what we provided in the past.
Yeah, thank you. Through the chair to Councillor Napper, we have not provided a report to committee recently. That intersection, that stretch of London Line where it transitions to Egremont, is to be constructed and reconstructed or work done on it in the next 2 to 3 years. We'll be having an update probably in the fall as it relates to that. So,
Just
that answer your question, or?
In response to that, like, these folks are quite concerned to live right there, and I think I've seen mail before come in from them, and there's been a death there, and the other day there was a bad accident last Saturday, I believe it was, and so they've been, and I think probably my council, I guess, will probably support what they're saying there, and I guess I do that through a letter to you. Is that how I should handle that?
Through you, Chair Rombouts, you can, if you want, if your council would like to express concerns, we always receive and bring forward those letters to council, to committee and council. I mean, your voice has been heard here today, and we will recognize whatever concerns those are. We're happy to talk to those individuals directly. We do like to have those concerns forwarded to us, and that's something we're fully able to respond to. I will say the most recent collision, where I know that Matt is working with the OPP to take a look and see if there was any fundamental cause or underlying reason at that intersection that would, support a singular action. And at this time, we don't have that to demonstrate.
Okay. Is it possible for the committee to request a report to be done? Yes. Councillor Napper, would you like to request that?
I would like to do that. I'm not up on procedures, I'm not much for group.
Yeah, no.
But just do it the proper way. I'd like to see maybe come back with a report on that, and because there seems to be a lot of concerns out there, and it's an open intersection. I don't understand why there's ever an accident there, but I think what it is the driver error. A lot of times they got that long stretch coming up from the south there, and then from the north, and you're on it before you know it, and it's just it's happening out there, and it's much similar to what was happening down in St. Clair. They put in some complaints and stuff down there, but these people have got a big concern. It's very trying on them too, because they're witnessing this all the time, and they're usually the first ones there. So if anything can be done, I would ask for that. Maybe bring a report. Pardon? Oh,
They're driving with their phone in their hand.
I don't know that.
So do we need a motion to reflect that request, or can we just do committee direction on that, Mr. Cole?
Well, I think Matt's indicated that we were planning to bring one forward in the fall anyway. I think the committee direction has been heard, and that corresponds with the actions that staff had prepared to do anyway.
Okay. Councillor Napper?
Could that be sped up a little bit? Like, it seems to me the fall is a long time away. It's like
Already mid-June. That's not very long away, actually.
We won't have an opportunity to bring something back before September or before like an August meeting in any event. To get the information and pull that by that time is, I think the fall is probably a realistic timeline.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for that, Councillor Napper. I know there are people in my municipality that are concerned about that intersection as well. So I appreciate you bringing that forward. Is there any other new business for this part of the committee? All right. Thank you, Mr. DeLine and Mr. Cole. We're going to move on to Public Health Services Division. So we have some correspondence to receive and file. Councillor Weber, are you just moving to receive and file that? Yeah. And Warden Marriott, any questions or comments on that? All in favor of receiving and filing? That is carried. We have 4 information reports. I don't know if the committee wants to receive and file all of those together, or if you want to deal with each of them separately. Councillor Bradley?
Yeah, I move to receive and file all 4 of them. I do have some questions on item C, which is the opiate report.
Yes, thank you. Do we have a seconder to receive and file? Councillor Miller, thank you. And I'm going to let you ask your questions about the information report regarding the opioid trends.
Okay. I'm not sure who's on the call that can answer. I see Michael's on there, Gorgie. Obviously a very disturbing trend to see the numbers of year to year. And I recognize that's the same case across the province and across the country. When I read the report, I just couldn't get a sense of, is there anything further beyond what's being done now by the health unit that could make a substantive difference on trying to decrease the number of opiate deaths? I realize that's a big question, but is there something else we could be doing that we're not today that would make a difference?
That's a very good question. And for those who are watching that don't have the report right in front of them, Councillor Bradley is referring to the fact that the opioid deaths have nearly doubled here in Sarnia, Lambton, and in Ontario, according to this report, which is very concerning. So we'll ask Mr. Taylor maybe to address that.
Yeah, through you, Councillor Rambout. Thank you for the question, Councillor Bradley. Yes, this is very concerning. We've certainly heard throughout many jurisdictions throughout the province the increase in opioid impacts. I think what we have started to do here in Lambton County with some funding that was received from the province is to start to look at the data locally, producing surveillance bulletins. You're aware that we have been active with our naloxone programs. You had introduced a very successful program with respect to the patch for patch. And then we entered a local drug strategy that identified a number of priority areas for us to start working on. COVID came and we were a little bit detracted, that's the truth. But getting back to this work, the harm reduction strategy, as well as the demand reduction work with all the community partners is on our radar as well. Mr. Mike Gordy is on the call as well. And I would ask him to expand on a couple of the initiatives that we are planning to get back to.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for the question, Mayor Bradley. Yeah, it is an intractable problem.
Michael, it's a little bit hard to hear you.
Sorry, I have the technology issues locally here, so I apologize. It is a very intractable problem locally and provincially. We have continued our naloxone and needle exchange programs. We've worked with a number of partners to increase our surveillance and our early response systems. We've expanded outreach to our populations who are currently in supportive housing. But as for quick wins, I don't think there's an easy answer. I think we as a community need to look at a multi area plan. I think going back to the drug and alcohol strategy, and I think we need to reboot that. We do need to assess how the pandemic has changed issues within our community and drug use patterns. But the pandemic has definitely impacted this population with, unregulated drug supply changes because of the pandemic, decreases in services, early release from correctional facilities has played a part in this. So there's no quick wins, but it's definitely something that we want to get back to as soon as possible by gathering our steering committee and re-looking at this plan to get some early actions to hopefully mitigate some of the issues that are coming out of this pandemic.
Okay, well, thank you for that. I appreciate with COVID that those issues have been has slipped a bit down the priority list. But I really am concerned as we come out of the as we get through this year, that the homeless issue and the addiction issue is still going to be much higher than it ever was before. And then what do we do to try to deal with that? So again, I appreciate it. And it's good to get on the record what you are doing. So thank you.
I'm just wondering about the prevention of these addictions. Like, for example, when I was a kid, we had Scared Straight programs in schools. And in talking to my 4 children, they took away those Scared Straight programs. And I've asked in the past why. And they said, well, they don't work. But now we're in an epidemic of mass proportions of addiction. So maybe they did work, and maybe we need to circle back and readdress that and bring some real facts into the high school and public school levels of what these drugs do and the impacts that they have on people's lives. Because my kids didn't get it from outside of our household. They didn't get the programming where they came in and said, like, this is what happens when you go on these drugs, and it only takes one time and people die. And, you know, like, they didn't get any of that information outside of our household. Maybe one of you could speak to that.
Yeah, so Councilor Ramos, I understand what you're saying. It's more difficult. Look, when we started down this path, there were rationale. The rates of alcohol use in Lambton County were far beyond the provincial levels. Opioid prescription rates were much higher in Lambton than in other areas. Crystal meth, people were seeking treatment for crystal meth at a very high rate. This is why we started down this path. And what we needed to do to be successful was to engage community partners. So, for example, Blue Water Hospital, their addictions center has been brought on board, as well as the school board. And the school board does not permit us to go into their facilities and do that type of education. So I can respect the types of programs that you're referring to that may have worked in the past, but I think the focus now is on just trying to understand the problem. And there's a lot of things to Mayor Bradley's question that we really can't do at this level. Decriminalizing drugs, some of those policy issues have to happen at a much higher level. So this is a very complex issue. So I do understand the programs that you're referring to. I know them quite well, but I don't know that there's any science or evidence that those have been successful. So that's the best I could tell you in that regard, Councilor Ramos.
Well, they scared me enough. I can tell you that. So that's good information to know that we need to be going to our school boards and requesting maybe some more education in that. Any other questions or comments from the committee today on that or any of the information reports?
I'll just
Councillor Bradley?
Yeah, I'm going to wait till the fall to give the province the opportunity. It'll almost be a year since we were successful getting the additional funding for what is now Ryan's House, which has been a great help in dealing with addictions and getting some of the pressure off Blue Water Health and giving them more opportunity to treat people. But I think once the fall comes, we've been fair to the province and we did appreciate the temporary funding. We need to get the permanent funding for the addiction treatment facility. And this council is on record supporting that in the past. And in September, if there isn't movement, then I'll be bringing a motion again. And this time asking us to really ratchet up the game because that's a big part, permanent funding and a permanent treatment facility within the Sarnia-Lambton community. So I'm just giving that as notice for the fall.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments on any of those information reports? All in favor of receiving and filing those reports? That is carried. Thank you. And is there any other business? Councillor Bird.
Thank you. Through the chair to Mr. Taylor, please. I was hoping to speak with Dr. Renaday today, but I believe, Mr. Taylor, that you have been copied on this particular issue. So I'd like to just explain first. There was an article in the paper just recently indicating that London apparently has different information from their public health department than we have here in Sarnia-Lambton. The medical officer of health in the London region claimed that the COVID-19 vaccination was the best method for preventing transmissions, whereas Dr. Renaday had said that they have no proof of this yet. So I'd first like to thank Dr. Renaday for contacting Dr. Chris Mackey and asking him for the source of his information by which he made this claim. As of our last email, Dr. Renaday's request had gone unanswered. So my first point to you, Mr. Taylor, please, is are you aware if Dr. Renaday has yet received any information from Dr. Mackey?
Through you, Councillor Rombouts. So I am aware of what you are speaking to, Councillor Bird, and I know that Dr. Renaday has committed to following up with Dr. Chris Mackey. As you can appreciate, everybody's pretty busy at this time, so I just know that Dr. Renaday has not had the opportunity to follow that up, but we will respond to your question and follow up with you directly.
No, because thank you. That was a very important issue, because in the paper it had, a heading as large as life for the students going back to in residence at Western this September, that they must have the vaccination. And he put this claim underneath to say that it's already proven that it stops transmission. So brings me to, I appreciate your feedback, Mr. Taylor, but the other thing that brings me to, what do we do, at least in Ontario, to make sure our medical information is correctly and consistently disseminated, i.e. that the information and updates are all coming from the same source? Can you give us anything on that, please?
So through you, Councillor Rombouts, I understand the question, but it's very difficult. I would suggest to you that medical officers of health have the legal authority in their jurisdictions, and they do meet regularly with the chief MOH, and they do have a forum, as well as they take information from the public health scientific table, who's been very active in COVID. So I would suggest to you that I don't want to sit here and say everybody's reading from the same songbook, because that's not the case. But, we do have to respect the information that's provided through our legislative authority of the Medical Officer of Health's office in every regard. And is that consistent across 34 public health units? I would suggest maybe it might not be all the time. So that's the best I could tell you in that respect, Councillor.
Okay, thank you.
Any other new business? All right, we will move on to Cultural Services Division. There are no reports submitted. Is there any other business for Cultural Services Division before I move on to Corporate Services? All right, we will go on to Corporate Services Division. And there is a tabled motion from previous meetings there on resuming committee meetings in person. How does the committee want to deal with that? Councillor Bradley. You are muted, sir.
I understand first we have to lift this from the table, so I'll move that motion, and then I'll move a second motion.
Thank you for that. Councillor Weber, are you seconding that? Thank you. All in favor of lifting that motion from the table? That is carried. Thank you.
And the second motion would be to accept that we deal with this issue in October, in early October, as recommended.
Do we have a seconder to that? Councillor Veens? Any discussion? Councillor Weber?
Just a question. Certainly would be great to get back to having our in-person meetings. And that should happen quicker if we were all vaccinated. Is that going to be any kind of a regulation that when we do come back, that we both have our both shots? We all have our both shots? Just a question whether that's a possible thing or...
I believe that's against the law at this point, is it not?
Probably is, but I would ask the fan to comment.
Yeah, through you, Chair Rombouts, that's definitely a multifaceted question with multiple layers. But I think the short answer is, can you compel, for instance, members to be vaccinated against COVID-19 as a prerequisite to meeting in person? I don't believe council would be in that position at this point in time. So I'm going to keep that answer short, but there are different ways of addressing it. I do believe that once we get back into in-person meetings, that public health guidance and recommendations such as distancing and PPE, not necessarily PPE, but disinfecting hands and whatnot will continue. So we'll definitely approach that the health, safety, and wellness aspect of things once we get back into these in-person meetings in accordance with public health guidance.
Follow up to Councillor Bird's question, I think the information that she was requesting of verification that the vaccine does stop transmission would be very helpful in knowing that. And we do know that everybody who is double vaccinated is protecting themselves and therefore should not be worried about the people who are not vaccinated because they've taken all the measures that they need to do to protect themselves. Any other comments? Councillor Weber.
Just through you, Chair, further to that, I guess I was probably out of order asking that question because this is a motion to table without debate. So I shouldn't have even asked that. Thank you.
No worries. No worries. So all in favor of tabling that until the October meeting? That is carried. All right. We do have in-camera update. Do we need a motion to move in camera? Yes, I need a motion. Councillor Napper and Deputy Warden Hand, all in favor? That is carried. For those of you who are watching us on YouTube, we wish you a happy, healthy, and safe week, and we will be returning just to into open session just to adjourn the meeting. So we will not be returning to the YouTube channel to do that. So have a good day.